Most people know me for I suppose, for my service in Iraq. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my time in Afghanistan, something a bit new, I suppose, for some people. So in the summer of 2001, I was sent to a place called Macedonia, and I was in 2-power at the time, and me and my colleagues thought we were going to war. And when we got off the plane in Macedonia, with all our weapons and everything, we were met by a phalanx of photographers. And it quickly set in what this is about, is a sort of PR war. And everywhere we went, every time we went out on the ground, there was always photographers there before us. So we were kind of bored, and the only thing that happened, the only sort of tragedy of that tour was that as we were driving under some motorway bridges, a youth dropped a concrete slab onto one of our vehicles, and someone sadly died. But that was really the sort of most tragic thing that happened. However, whilst we were out in Macedonia, I remember it was on September the 11th, some guys come rushing into where we were all staying. We're all staying in this massive fruit factory. They said, "You're never going to believe this shit. You've got to come and watch this." And we ran over to the only TV, which was in a fruit shop across the way. And I was watching this happen, and I was just thinking, is this real? You know, it looked like a disaster movie or something. I just couldn't believe what was happening. Within a day, we were getting briefed that we were going to attack Afghanistan. We were also told that all options were on the table. And like our platoon sergeant, who was in charge at the time, said, the nuclear option is on the table. And I was sort of sat there almost laughing, thinking, are you serious? And we came back from Macedonia, and we started to move into a build-up towards Afghanistan. And it was then that there was a noticeable change in the culture of the army that maybe we didn't realise at the time, but something had changed. When we were back in barracks, if we'd been to Northern Ireland for 6 months, when we came back to barracks, we used to get up at 8 o'clock, go for breakfast, go for a run, come back, lie on our beds, get up in the afternoon, go for another run, go down the pub, come back, lie on our beds. It was great. But all of a sudden, we started to get worked more and more, go on this course, go on that course, really ramping up the training. And as a battalion, we deployed to Kabul in the end of 2001, start of 2002. I think we were the first sort of regular infantry troops into Kabul. And one of the things that sort of kind of amazed me at the time was when you were talking to people on the streets or talking to people you met, they thought we were the Russians. And I don't think they even realised that 9/11, well, they realised that 9/11 happened, but they didn't realise it was anything to do with them. And they didn't really know why we'd come to their country. So that was quite an eye-opener, really. Two of the jobs I was involved in at that time, the first job was training up former Mujahideen fighters to fight for the Afghan National Army. And it makes me laugh because for years afterwards, like we started this work in 2002, and for years afterwards we were always told, we'll leave Afghanistan when we've trained up this army. And I was just thinking, well, we started that in 2002, how long does it take? And I remember when we were training these guys, there was 2 schools of thought. I was a zealot. I was so straight down the line at the time. And I was teaching these guys as best as I could, how to take cover and all the rest of it, and, how to fire the rifles properly. And a mate of mine, Bob, who was a bit of a comedian anyway, he was teaching them that if anyone fired at them, to stand up in the open and run in the open. I said, Bob, what's all this about? He goes, we'll be fighting these guys soon. And he was right, So. But it all sort of became clear, I suppose, when we were showing them a variety of weapons, and we showed them an anti-tank missile. And this missile is operated, and it's on a wire. And we showed them how it worked, and the guys were talking about it. And one of these guys that we were training, who we considered sort of like peasants who didn't know anything about warfare, said, if you fire this anti-tank weapon and the tank drops into dead ground behind a hill, can you get the missile to change direction? And the guy taking the lesson was sort of, wow, no one's ever asked me that before. It's a really good question. But these guys were thinking. These guys were already thinking about what they were going to be doing soon, And so we continued that task, and then I got sent, I was put in charge of an OP. I don't know if anyone's been to Kabul, but there's a mountain in the middle of it called TV Mountain. And on the top there's an old restaurant, and we bombed it with a J-dam. And so it's a big old concrete circular thing on the top of a mountain. There's a big hole in the middle. And we put all this sensitive signals equipment up there, and me and my team were up there to sort of guard it. And I suppose the thing I remember about this job and Afghanistan at the time as a whole was, it was basically boring. You wanted something to happen, and nothing did. And so guys started to make things happen. And whilst I was in that OP looking down into one half of Kabul, which was the poor half where the Hazara lived and there was no electricity, you know, things started to happen. On one night, a mate of mine who was in another OP said that he'd been shot at. An OP, sorry, an observation post. Sorry. Said that he'd been shot at. Now, no one had heard a shot go off. And he said that he was going to now engage the target. And he fired into this empty window. But what he really wanted to do was, we had had these new rifles, and he wanted to be the first guy to fire this rifle. And the ante started to up. You know, we were on top of this mountain, like I was saying. It was an old restaurant, an old cafeteria. We had all this stuff, like beer barrels and all this other stuff. And we were bored up the top there, and it's a big old mountain. So, guys just like pick up a barrel of beer, an empty barrel, and just roll it down. Smash into someone's house, laugh about what had happened, you know. And so you could see the sort of attitude of the guys, you know, like sort of trying to wind things up a bit. And that sort of came to a head really when there was a curfew, and we had some guys in a water tower, and there was about 4 of them up there. They'd been up there carrying out another observation post, and it's never really become clear what really happened, but their side of the story is that they saw this car approaching them. Now, they were a covert observation post, so that no one should have known they were there. And they felt under threat from this car, and they opened fire with a machine gun and a sniper rifle. And it turned out that it was a pregnant woman with her family trying to get some medical help. And that was the extent of our role in Afghanistan, really, was that everything was instigated by us, and that things got slowly more aggressive as the longer we stayed there. So in the last week I was there, I didn't know it was my last week, but in the last week I was there, my platoon sergeant, who was ultra keen, decided that we were going to go on this patrol up into the mountains and find a route to the airport in case we got attacked. No one was attacking us. And so we went up into the mountains. We was up there for about 3 days. But I think what we all really wanted was, we wanted to start something. We wanted people to shoot at us. You know, that's what we wanted. Anyway, we came back down off that patrol, and I got told that I was going back to the UK. And my sort of last memory of that particular time in Afghanistan was, nothing had really happened, but we'd been out amongst the Afghan people and, you know, getting dirty and cold and tired and all this other stuff. And we'd gone back to this main base, and it was like a holiday camp. And I'm in shit order, dirty clothes, dirty boots, and I decided to clean my rifle. You know, that's what I decided to do. And I'm trying to get onto this plane to go back. And the plane was full of people who'd come over to Afghanistan, done 28 days to get the medal, and then flew back. Because they were like officers who'd managed to get over there and come back. And there was a lot of that sort of tourism going on. Anyway, as I've gone to get on the plane, this RAF guy stops me and says, you know, you haven't polished your boots. I said, what? He goes, you haven't polished your boots. I said, are you serious? I goes, I haven't got any boot polish. He goes, I'll get you some. So that was the last thing I did in Afghanistan that time, was polish my boots, you know, make sure I looked presentable when I got off the plane at the other end. I'm going to hand back to Ryan for a couple more songs, I think.
Thanks. I had to remember the lyrics to this song. I changed the last verse to include a... You'll see. This is an anti-war song that was originally written back in the 60s, but I wrote new verses to it. I don't even know who wrote it. But yeah, just thinking about how I don't know how the people who are responsible for a lot of the decisions to go to war, the ones who are making Ben polish his boots, as if war isn't messy, how they pull the money and they walk around with all the stuff on their chest and all these things, and they sit in the meetings with all the people and stuff, and a lot of them don't ever actually see what the thing looks like. Some of them do, sure. It's about them. You don't have to own a gun to be a killer. You don't even have to think it's fun to be a killer. Just give somebody a solid start. Break their soul and then break their heart. Don't give them work and let their family starve. You make a killer. You don't have to break the law to be a killer. You don't need no digiflage to be a killer. Take a fresh recruit on the job pursuit, promise them a little college loot, and then put them somewhere where they have to shoot to make a killer. You don't have to be a special breed to be a killer. Just take a young person in need and make a killer. Or just buy yourself a company manufacturing weaponry and lobby to use it endlessly to be a killer. I think there's another line, hold on. Oh yeah, there you go. You don't have to leave your desk to be a killer. You don't even need to get your hands wet to be a killer. Just utilize your rhetoric, that fight for freedom bullshit, and use it to make profit. You'll be a killer. You don't have to be alone to be a killer. You don't even have to leave your home to be a killer. You got your Congress and your Parliament, your Prime Minister and your President, and the corporations they represent. You own a killer.